Okay, so hi everybody. My name is Elena. I am on the Scoir team, and I'm so happy to be here tonight and to be with Ethan. This is going to be a really great event, so I hope that you're excited. And just so that everyone knows, a recording will be sent out after this, so no worries about that. You can always go back and rewind. Before we get started and I hand it over to Ethan, I just wanted to give a little background as to what is Scoir. So for those of you who maybe aren't super familiar or even are super familiar with Scoir, Scoir gives students the tools to support them on their journey from searching and discovering colleges all the way through applying. And our mission is really to expand college access and improve collegiate outcomes. And that's something that we try to incorporate into everything that we do. So I'll share my screen really quick just to give you a little glimpse in case you, again, are or are not super familiar. So on Scoir, you can discover colleges. And one of the things that I like to do is do filtered searches. So you can add as many or as few filters as you'd like, whether it's major, year, college size, and then you can explore what the results are. You also can explore different posts from colleges. So this is a new feature, and it's actually content that's coming right from colleges. So if you're interested in virtual tours, for example, you could pick that post hashtag, and then you could see the content from colleges that you like. You can also check out events. So if you're interested in certain colleges and you want to see who has virtual events or even recurring events, you can check those out and register for as many as you'd like. Another thing that you can do is one of the things that I always say I wish I had, which is to find your college match quiz. So in just 2 minutes, you can take this quiz where you can pick what you'd like to study, different activities that you're interested in, and then we'll match you with colleges that fit that criteria. So once you go exploring all of those colleges and you start gathering the ones that you like, you can organize them in your My Colleges list. So this is where you can add the colleges that you're interested in, that you're following, and then the ones that you're applying to and then have applied to. And the really cool thing is that you can keep all of your colleges in one place and then ultimately apply with Scoir. So you can actually keep your applications in one place too and apply to 130 plus colleges directly through Scoir. So if you don't already have an account, you can go to app.scoir.com to create your account, or you can log in to take advantage of all of these. And if you're already, a Scoir pro and you're just looking for extra resources, our Scoir blog has tons of posts with tips all the way from your first year of high school through senior year for picking colleges, finding colleges that are right for you. So you can always explore those on our blog. And we also have our podcast series, Inside College Admissions. So we have tons of episodes, including ones with the College Essay Guide team. So be sure to check those out. They're on everywhere that you listen to podcasts. And then finally, if you're looking for all of these resources in one place, we have our resource center. So you can go to scoir.com and then students and families and resources. And this is where you'll see highlighted resources that are updated really frequently based on what's going on in the academic year. So go ahead and check it out. You'll get some guides and checklists, blog articles, podcasts, you name it. So that's the brief Scoir overview. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Ethan.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Well, hi, and thanks, Elena. That was lovely. And I'm glad to be doing this with you. This is, if you've never met me before and you've never seen my resources, first of all, they're, kind of in different places inside the Scoir platform. But my hope in this session is to give you a pretty, hopefully succinct, but action-packed, let's call it 35 minutes of stuff that you can use right away when it comes to figuring out your application and your essays. So like most of y'all won't even know this reference is from like an 80s commercial where folks just get kind of blown away, but that's kind of how I tend to go with resources. I'm trying to be like, I'm kind of a buffet guy, and for years I've kind of run my sessions like a buffet. I know I'm mixing my metaphors already, where I'll kind of do like a little bit from all the things. I'm trying to be a little more like tasting menu style, where it's like, okay, a little bit of this and a little bit of this. And that's kind of the vibe that I'm going for here. And it's my guiding metaphor for this session. So here's what's on, if we were doing a tasting menu, here's what's on the tasting menu for tonight's session. So we're going to start with 7 different ways to find your personal statement topic. I'm going to talk to you about this values exercise, which to me is kind of the heart of this whole process. I'll give you some thoughts on these new supplemental essay prompts. And what I mean by that is like there are essays besides the personal statement that you'll maybe need to write for colleges. And yes, those are gluten-free. And then we've got some larger plates, which will take us a little bit longer. So I've got some like thoughts on the supplemental essays and how to approach those prompts. We're going to talk about the Why Us essay, which is one that comes up for a lot of students applying to selective schools. I'm going to talk to you about your activities list, and I'm going to give you 3 really great resources for improving that. It's like your brag sheet. And then I'm going to talk about this optional COVID section, which sometimes mystifies students. They're like, should I write about it? Should I not? So we'll talk about that. And then I will give you a chance to hang out with me for a month, and I'll explain that at the end. Okay. If you've never met me before, again, I spend a lot of time thinking about this. I'm the college essay guy. That's like me, I guess, 10 years ago. I went to Northwestern and UC Irvine, have been basically doing this job for the last 20 years off and on, such that, you know, college essay guy has gotten popular enough that we had 3.5 million people on the blog last year, which was kind of wild. And fun fact, I'm a former MK third culture kid who grew up in Spain, Ecuador, and Colombia. Y hablo español cuando me conviene. Kind of college essay guy is known for free stuff. If you go to collegeessayguy.com/free, you'll see all the things. I've got a podcast with a whole bunch of new episodes coming out. We've got like 6 in the can that are coming out really soon. The latest ones are, as I guess, not really coincidence, but are on self-care. And there's one we just did on like how to pick your high school courses. And we've got a cool scholarship called Matchlighter Scholarship. So if you're a student who is low income and is interested in free essay and application support, if you go to collegeessayguy.com/matchlighters, we'll put these links in the chat so you can find them easily. You'll find some awesome resources and basically an opportunity to connect with a counselor for 10 hours of free one-on-one support. I'll tell you at the end a little bit more about some courses that we do and one-on-one support and stuff. But for now, let's get into the stuff. So what is the stuff? What are we talking about here? So I call this the mapping process. The mapping process is essentially what you're doing with your application. So you've got like all these random moments and memories and experiences and values and qualities. And the question is, how do you take all of this awesomeness, or you might think chaos, and map it onto the gray boxes of your college application? So here are the pieces, what I'll call the essential pieces of your application. And the ones that I'll focus on in this session are going to be the ones like up here. That's why they're a little bit larger. The ones at the bottom are also really important, but I'm going to start talking about the main personal statement. And the reason I put this box so big is because I'm a college essay guy. Because this is the thing that I think is going to take up the chunk of your time over the next couple months. And hopefully, if you haven't started it, hopefully what I'm going to share with you in a few minutes kind of gets you cooking on that. The next thing I'll talk about some of these supplemental essays that I mentioned earlier. Some schools have like short answers that you need to answer. And if you Google like short answers college essay guy, you'll see a blog on that. We won't cover that today. The activities list is, like I mentioned, your brag sheet. You've got these additional information sections, which is like a place for you to talk about things that didn't fit elsewhere. Some schools, not too many, but some schools have an optional video. And then some of the things that we won't be talking about today that are also important in your application are obviously your GPA, aka your grades, test scores, if you're submitting test scores, how difficult your classes are, recommendation letters. Did you demonstrate interest, which we won't get into today? That's a whole separate session, but okay, if you Google it, you'll find a whole blog on that. Interviews, and there are a couple other miscellaneous things, but this pretty much are like the essential parts of your application. The goal here is to like fill them in with awesomeness and hopefully show different sides of yourself. So you'll notice these are like different colors so that each one of these is showing some new side of you so that at the end, we're like, oh, cool. Here's this lovely work of you, essentially in all these lovely colored boxes. Still boxes, but hey. I want to start with the values exercise before I talk about the personal statement, because I feel like this one is so core to this whole process. So I'm going to actually share with you a link in the chat. And this is our values exercise. It's going to be easier for you to look at probably. So in the chat, click this link if you like. And by the way, if folks direct message me, I'm not going to be able to get back to you. I'm sorry, because I'm teaching a thing right now. So if you click that link, you'll be taken to this values list. And there's like a little YouTube video around this. But what I want you to do is I want you to take a minute. Let's actually take 2 minutes here. And I want you to see if you can look at this list of values. And I want you to try to identify 3 of your most important values. And if you will, humor me, put them in the chat. What are 3 of your most important values today? I'm going to read a few of these as they come in. Community, inspiration, and family. Thanks, Alicia. We've got music, quiet, and humor. I love the contrast there. Love it. Knowledge, faith, and family. Cool. We've got compassion, adventure, and faith. We've got honesty and knowledge. Lovely. Here's what I find about this exercise, that even though I've done this exercise for, whatever, 10, 12 years, and it usually it conjures something and it gives us something that we can kind of focus on and something that starts a conversation. Now, of course, you can't just say in your personal statement that, okay, for me, the things that are important to me, I'm going to share this visually so y'all can see it in case you're not able to click the link. You can't just say in your college essay, like, I value independence, objectivity, and purpose, and then just be like done there. The question is, how do all these different values manifest themselves? How do they manifest themselves in your life, in your work, and the things you do for fun? And perhaps most importantly, what are the values you're going to bring with you to the college campus? So here's a video, and we'll share the link to this afterwards, but there's a YouTube video. And yes, I do like to screenshot things that show me closing my eyes, because it's kind of like that moment in pictures when people are like, anyway. So it's called How to Brainstorm 7 Different Personal Statement Ideas. And essentially, I want to give you 7 different ways. I'm going to kind of give you the one, well, it'll be like more like the 2 or 3 minute version of this video. And if you want the longer version, you can watch the video and brainstorm it over 27 minutes and 47 seconds. But essentially, let me share my face for just a second. Essentially, the way I came up with these 7 different types was not sort of like having a dream and like these ideas came to me. It was like I looked at about 250 different personal statements and kind of did an analysis. And I would call them like successful personal statements, in the sense that these students got into great colleges and they also were able to show skills, qualities, values, and interests that they're going to bring with them to a college campus. So if I had to like say in a sentence, I'll say it to you again, what the purpose of the personal statement is, it's to demonstrate skills, qualities, values, and interests that you're going to bring with you to a college campus. So what I found is that after students that I worked with or that my team worked with had kind of, hunted around for topics, they kind of landed on these 7 ones. Fun fact, spoiler alert, none of them necessarily have to do with challenges. So there's this idea that I think out there that we have to write about a challenge. And I want to share with you, now you can write about a challenge, but I want to share with you 7 different ones that don't have to do with challenges. So the first one, sometimes students will write about something that they love or know a lot about. And by love or know a lot about, I'm talking about things like animals or plants or science or, I don't know, blacksmithing. So it could be, number 1, something that you love or know a lot about. And a quick way to brainstorm this, and it's in the video, is just brainstorm for a minute, literally. What are some things that you love or know a lot about? The second one that students sometimes hit on or land on is writing about what I call essence objects, or it could just be like the stuff in your room. So another simple exercise is to take a look at your values list. Let's say you pick 10 values. and then ask yourself, okay, how do these values manifest in my life in terms of like concrete, tangible things? So let's say you value community. What is it in your life that represents community that's like a tangible thing? Because you could totally write a personal statement around a series of objects that represent these different sides of you, different things that you value. The third one, so number 2 is objects, essentially essence objects. The third one is a skill or a superpower. So let's say there's something that you're super good at. And by the way, if you look at the values exercise, that might lead you to your superpowers. But let's say you're really good at figuring out what it is that other people need, even before they even know they need it. So maybe your superpowers, we'll call it recognizing needs. And you just do like a series of paragraphs on how this quality, this theme of recognizing needs, is something that manifests in your life in lots of different ways. So the third way is like a skill or superpower, but that also applies to like building things. So it could be that you love to see patterns, or you love to build things, or you love to like take things apart and put them back together physically, but maybe also like, conceptually. So another brainstorm is just like, what are my superpowers? What are the things that I'm great at? And you could pick one, or you could do like a superpowers montage where it's like, here are a few different things that I'm awesome at and how each one manifests in my life. The fourth one is career. So if you've got a career thing that you're pretty interested in doing, you can go to that values list and think about what are the 4 to 7 qualities that you think would be necessary to be someone who is like outstanding in that career. So let's say you pick entrepreneur, and you look at that list and you're like, okay, I need to be creative, and I would need to be have a good sense of humor. Maybe I would need to be connected to, I don't know, equity. It depends on what kind of entrepreneur you want to be. But essentially, you can look at those values and go, okay, how did I develop each of these values? When did I start to value, for example, productivity or equity or sense of humor? And then your essay could essentially be moments that have led you to develop these different qualities, these different values that in the end are going to serve you in your future career. So that's another way you could structure it. That's 4. So again, I'll recap them at the end. Number 5 is an identity or identities that you connect with. So a simple 2-minute brainstorm you could do after this webinar would be like, okay, what are 10 different identities that you possess? And think of identity broadly. Think of the communities that you're a part of. So for me, I identify as a theater nerd because that's what I did in high school. I identify as a writer. I identify as a now father, etc. So you could just brainstorm, okay, what are all the different ways that I identify? And you could do a paragraph on each of these identities. 6th one, it could be homes. Like, what are some different places where you find that you're at home? So students that I've met before, say like, I'm at home when I'm, coding at night, and I'm just like listening to music. I'm listening to like Hans Zimmer on my headphones, and I'm like in my zone. Like, where are you in your zone, in your flow state? And it could just be that like one home is like the coffee shop, and like you connect that to different values and different sides of you. So your whole essay could be on like in the coffee shop. Here's how I connect to different sides of me. It could be that you do a series of homes. Like, I'm at home when I'm on stage. I'm at home when I'm on the field. I'm at home when I'm doing this in the classroom. I'm at home when I'm like having late night conversations about philosophical topics. And each one of those could show a different side of you. But the common theme connecting thing is like places where I'm in my zone or in my flow. The last one is what I'd call like an uncommon extracurricular activity. So number 7 is like, what's the thing that you do that's not like a common sport or a common instrument that you feel like could set you apart? So you might do something like beekeeping, or maybe you do like scouting, but maybe you lead historical trail hikes. I'm using like a specific example essay from a student, but sometimes students will want to use extracurricular activities, and I want to encourage you to consider using your extracurricular activities for your supplemental essays. And part of that is that I think it's harder to stand out with common topics on common, sports, the basketball essay, the violin essay, etc. If you want, at the end, I can talk more about common topics. We just put out a YouTube video on it, actually. So those are 7 different ways that you could write your personal statement. Again, if you want that video, we'll follow up in the follow-up session, but you can just go to YouTube and type in 7 different personal statement ideas, college essay guy, and smash that like button. All right. So, I'm already sharing my screen, and I said screen share time. All right. So here's the handout with all the things. And I'm going to dive into some more text heavy stuff. So this is my tasting menu on a Google Doc. And again, we'll follow up with this later. The video will be linked there and the values exercise as well. So, the thing that I mentioned, let me just show you visually what I'm about to talk about here. So the thing that I talked about is like, I'm talking about this main personal statement. Now that essay is going to be probably up to about 650 words if you apply via the Common App. And that's going to go out to many of the schools that you apply to, because many schools are on the Common App. Not every school. Some schools, like the California schools or the Texas schools, have their own application. So what I just shared with you will apply for the Texas schools, less so for like the California schools. I have a whole separate guide and a whole separate course on that. Just Google University of California College Essay Guide and you'll see those. But what I want to talk about now is some of these supplemental essays. So when you apply to, let's say, Michigan, you're going to submit your personal statement, but they're also going to be like, hey, what's a community that you're a part of? And what's your role in that community? And then they're also going to be like, and why do you want to go to Michigan? Why us? So not every school, but many selective schools will have these supplemental essays. And this year, a lot of schools have changed their prompts. Okay. So here's some quick thoughts on these new supplemental essay prompts. So we have like 70 different guides that we've created on the 70 most Googled schools, and like 50 of them, I think, changed. So a bunch of them. A lot of them reference diversity, and this is in large part due to the Supreme Court's decision to get rid of race-conscious admissions. If this is something that's interesting to you, make sure you're signed up for our email list, because I've got like 4 different podcasts looking at this from different angles and a few different specific resources that are coming out. And to get on our email list, just opt in for anything on the site, like any of the free guides. So most of the prompts are optional. Like, for example, Sarah Lawrence's new prompt, which I don't need to read it right now. You can Google the Sarah Lawrence prompt, but some of them aren't. So Cornell, for example, says, essentially, I am going to read this one. In the aftermath of the US Civil War, Ezra Cornell wrote, I would found an institution where any person can find instruction in any study. Okay. And they're basically saying, we're committed to this, any person in any study. So the prompt asks is, we encourage you to think broadly about your life experiences, including how local or global communities you've been a part of have helped shape your perspective. Now, Harvard asks something kind of similar. How will the life experiences that shape who you are today enable you to contribute to Harvard? And these are relatively short, like 350 words and 200 words. Now, I'm going to give you like the very short version of how to write these prompts, but I was literally finishing in a coffee shop today the longer version of this. It's got a bunch of example essays, and we're going to release it on the blog really soon. But the short answer here is there's an exercise called the If You Really, Really Knew Me exercise that's going to brainstorm a whole bunch of different sides of you. And then that's part 1. Part 2 is essentially you need to research the school. So go research Cornell and think about, okay, what are the different sides of Cornell that I'm really interested in? And how do I connect specific things about me, things that I love, things that I'm into, values, qualities, et cetera, and connect them to specific things at the school? Now, that sounds a little bit like a YSSA, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, but essentially, especially for schools that don't have a YSSA, that's kind of the key here. So you're going like a bunch, you're kind of like researching you with this brainstorm exercise. And then part 2 is like researching the school, and then you're just like making connections. Okay. Some other resources that we're going to be putting out that I mentioned is there's a blog that I finished on, is it okay to talk about race in your college application and essays? The short answer is yes, it is okay, but you need to make sure that you connect it to a quality of character or a unique ability that you'll bring to the college campus. And that in many cases is your values. There's also a longer guide on how to write some of these prompts. There's also a podcast and a blog about why you don't necessarily need to talk about trauma in your college essay and some ideas for what you can do instead. Yeah, there's some more podcasts and stuff. And then there's also like a guide that we're putting together, or a resource that has a bunch of lists of like things that colleges are doing in the wake of the affirmative action decision. Okay. Sorry, affirmative action as it relates to college admissions. Affirmative action wasn't struck down, race-conscious admissions was struck down. So one essay that I want to zoom in on here a little bit that's not going away anytime soon is the Why Us essay. And the short version of why this essay is important, and in some cases maybe more important for certain schools than even the personal statement, is that colleges want to get some assurance that they're going to be a great fit for their institution. What do I mean by great fit? That one, if they accept you, then you're going to actually say yes to their invitation. because side note, even though this is weird, that's kind of connected to their rankings. I know that sounds weird, but like, yeah, it's called yield. And the second reason is that they want to know that if you come to the party that you're actually going to stay and enjoy the drinks and like eat the food and like have a really good time and, you know, hopefully graduate in 4 years. Because if you end up like, if they accept like 10 people, 10 students and, you know, like let's say 6 of them enroll, but like all like 5 of them drop out, that's not good. So they're looking for evidence that you are going to take advantage of the resources, that you know kind of what the campus vibe is. And you've got to do this in some really specific ways. So I have 3 approaches on this doc, which again, we'll share after. I want to walk you through the first 2 approaches briefly. So the first one's what I call the basic solid why us essay that includes a bunch of reasons. And the way to research it, the way to do it is basically research a whole bunch of opportunities. And then you can kind of use a standard, we'll call 5-paragraph format. But your thesis is going to be particular to the school. So check this out. And here's a way that students go wrong, I think, on this essay. By the way, this is like a 500-word essay. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to read the first 2 paragraphs. But I think students often go wrong by they try to have like some really interesting hook at the start. And for this essay in particular, I think it's okay to keep your hook, if you have one, super short, and then just get into what I would call the meat and potatoes of the essay. Okay, if you're a vegetarian, just potatoes and potatoes, potatoes and vegetables. So Mark Twain was a steamboat pilot, the student writes. Agatha Christie was a nurse. Robert Frost was a light bulb filament changer. The best writer is to not only write beautifully, but also integrate their personal experiences and knowledge outside the world of literature. By combining the study of literature, media, and perhaps law, I believe the University of Michigan will provide the education necessary for me to evolve as a journalist. So notice how short this hook is. It's like, what is it, 40 words? 40 words. Like, that's like, 9% of the word limit. Like, keep it super short. And okay, cool, we get it. You're going to want to do something that connects to the main thing you want to do. And in particular, this student wants to talk about, study literature, media, and law. And this is essentially his thesis. And I think UM is going to be the place for me to evolve as a journalist. And he's naming his career, or his intended career, AKA his major, in the first paragraph. Now, if you know your major and you want to cite it in your first paragraph, 2 thumbs up, I'm a fan. Part of why that's a good idea, I think, is that they're trying to sort you among the sea of like other students. And if you're kind of keeping them guessing about what you're going to major in, that's a little bit like they're maybe like searching for that sometimes. I would say if you can get that in there, great. Now, if you're not sure what you want to study, just naming a few things that you're interested in studying, like literature, media, and law. And I believe the University of Michigan is the ideal place for me to up level in each of these areas. Like you can basically name a few things that you're into. So in this second paragraph, the student says essentially, so this is going to be literature is going to be in this paragraph, by the way, media is going to be this paragraph, and then law, the third thing mentioned, is going to be in this paragraph. We're not going to again read them all, but the student starts off here and says, a journalist cannot reach the peak of his craft if his knowledge of literature and critical thinking skills are weak, which is why I'm excited to explore what the Department of English has to offer. Okay, give me some specifics. I look forward to courses such as, great, here's a specific one, academic argumentation and professional writing. Why? Because if he was just like, I want to take these courses because I think they're awesome, then we're kind of like, great, you haven't differentiated yourself at all. Why? For you, a future journalist, how are these classes going to help you up level? As I believe these will provide me with a firm basis in journalistic writing technique and improve my abilities to write analytically and develop well-supported arguments. That's like, I don't know, balm to my soul. When I read that, like something in me settles because I'm like, okay, cool. I get some sense of how you're going to make use of the resources. Quick note, if you've already written a YS draft, I want you to scan it right now for how many capital letters do you have? Because that to me tells me that you've done your research. So like as you scroll down here, you'll see, okay, the honors program, capital letters, WLOLVTV, the Michigan Daily. These are all specific things that the student is interested in. And if you read the essay, are connected back to him. And then you'll see like pre-law advising program. Why? Because I want to explore the intricacies of law and policies that govern this world. Okay, that's a little vague. I would like probably put, this is the note I would put, be specific. I'd probably be like more specific, question mark. Okay. And here's a better connection. The judicial role of a lawyer is closely related to the expository skills of a writer. I'm seeing the connection. And I look forward to exploring this new field of study that wasn't offered in my high school education. Okay, cool. By the way, side note, you don't have to be a genius in everything and then be like, and I'm going to be like genius 2.0 based on y'all's what I'm going to learn at Michigan. No, you can be like, hey, I didn't get a chance to do this. Here's another reason that I want to do it. And then he ends with, hey, I want to also give back. Like what? Boys and Girls Club. And also, what else? He mentions one more, the ESL teaching program. And he connects it back to himself. He says, because I have previous experience with elementary school teaching. So again, you, them. It can go them, you, right? But you need to make sure that you're doing both, probably in the same sentence. So YSSA 101, a thing about you, a thing about them, put them together, okay? Again, if you've written a draft already, scan it and go, are there any things that I'm just like leaving hanging out there and just assuming that they'll know why I think they're cool? Because yes, a pre-law advising program, I could imagine that that's like a cool thing to do, but what does it have to do with you? How does it connect back to you? Okay? Approach number one, it takes some research. It's going to take you at least an hour, but I mean, if you like go to like the thing that you're interested in, Michigan, not Department of Corrections, Department of English. I want to show you how easy this is, or can be. Department of English. Let's just put in Michigan Department of English. And then here we go. So where's the, I need the course catalog. Let's get more specific with the thing. Department of English course catalog. I hope this works. Cool. Courses at Michigan. There we go. Boom. Okay. Oh, here's some of the ones that the student mentioned. Intro to creative writing. Now, what's not every school does this, but what Michigan has done is they've given course descriptions. So when you're trying to say why you want to take this course, you can get it. Don't say, in addition to doing copious writing, don't use their words. Okay. But you can use some of these specifics here, about how you're interested to up level. So just research literally naming the school, the department that you're into. And then you can learn about stuff like, oh, I'd love to get a creative writing minor because I'm really interested in, I don't know, advanced fiction writing, but then go find out about advanced fiction writing and get really specific. Okay. That's approach number one. Approach number two, if you've got the time, energy, and you can, to be honest, find the specifics, this is what I call the 3 to 5 unique offerings strategy. And what you're looking for here is stuff that's particular to the school. So the Michigan essay is great, but I imagine that another school is going to have a professional writing course, or they're going to have some version of like a school newspaper. So what this author does is he finds things that are particular to Cornell. Okay. The other thing that makes this essay different is the prompt. They ask here, tell us why the depth, breadth, and flexibility of our curriculum are ideally suited to exploring the areas of study that excite you. Now, implication there, we need to know a little bit about the areas of study that excite you, which is called a why major essay. Quick side note, if you're interested more in the why major essay, Google why major college essay guy, and there's a blog post on that. But what he does is he weaves in the why major here at the start because they asked for it, and then gets into why Cornell. So again, not going to read the whole thing. But he talks about whenever he has time on his hands, hooking himself up to his EEG to analyze my brainwaves. Super nerdy, and I'm here for it. He says, I want to spend my life studying, understanding, and helping to fix the human brain. Great. This is what I call like a personal mission statement. So if you've got some version of this where you're pretty sure, pretty clear what you want to do, again, I think it's cool to put it in. Don't have to, but this is cool. He talks about, getting his first EEG. And then he says this at the end of the second paragraph, as someone who's long been passionate about neurotechnology, the fact that Cornell is unique in offering classes devoted specifically to the field is very important to me. Now, I love this because he's like, of all the schools that I'm applying to, Cornell is unique in offering classes devoted specifically to this. Great. That's number one, moment 1 of 4 that he does in this essay, that he points out something specific to Cornell. He also mentions the NeuroNext Hub and how he wants to work with Dr. Chris Hsu and Dr. Chris Schaefer, who, get this, whose research on deep neural activity isn't being done anywhere else in the world. Quick side note, I don't know how he knew that. I think he just really, really loves neurotech. But he found something that is like, now, I imagine that the Cornell reader is reading this and is like, I didn't know that. And if you can get that specific where you're sharing stuff about the school, that actually the reader is like, oh, that's cool. That they maybe don't know. That's how you've kind of taken this really to the next level. Now, I know that I'm putting the bar high here, but to me, this is what can help you stand out in these YS essays. Because guess what? If you say to Cornell, I can't wait to take intro to philosophy because I'm interested in like expanding my mind, that's a blend-in opportunity. The way that I think of these is like every paragraph or really every sentence is an opportunity to either blend in or stand out. And if you write a sentence, and you can do this too, scan your YS essay, that blends in, like, I can't wait to go to Cornell because I'm interested in intro to philosophy. Pretty sure somebody else is going to write that. Probably lots of people have written that before. But if you talk about how you're interested in working with Dr. Chris Xu in expanding the current 3-photon microscope to be applied on various animal models, that's when you're starting to stand out. I know that sounds super hardcore, but I want to help you stand out. Now, I say that and everybody's like, well, if everybody does that, well, most of you, like literally on this call, are not going to do this. Like, I'm going to tell you to do it. And you're like, it's hard. And we're like, well, okay. But this is sort of like the bar that I want to set for this. Next paragraph, you do not have to visit the campus in order to stand out. This student did happen to visit the campus and saw that this particular professor's students were engaged in a way the student had never seen in any other classroom. Cool. Reason number 3, why Cornell and I are deeply suited for one another. And number 4, he mentions studying Latin. He kind of weaves in that he studied Latin for over 7 years. By the way, this YS essay is not just you're trying to, like, you know, whatever, what's the expression? You're trying to just like make, you know, kiss up to the school. There are lots of different ways of saying that. But essentially, you're trying to still sell yourself. So like mentioning something that isn't necessarily mentioned elsewhere in your application and why it's important to you can be really cool. Like the fact that he studied Latin for over 7 years and he's experienced the positive effects on how, like, what that's done to his brain. Oh, and by the way, Cornell is also the only university I'm interested in that offers a speaking course in Latin called Conversational Latin. So if I read that as the Cornell reader, I'm like, okay, this guy's done his research, probably a pretty good fit. There's another approach here that I'm not going to get into right now because it's seldomly used. It's for specific schools, but it's there. We'll share it in the follow-up resources. Okay, let me see if any questions have come in. I'm sure there have been. I'm going to have plenty of time for questions at the end. Yeah, pretty much we're covering them so far. Thanks, Renee. You're awesome. Shout out to my awesome moderator, Renee. Okay, so here's some ways to improve your activities list. 3 quick resources. And again, links to come later. So when it comes to doing your activities list, you're probably trying to remember some of the stuff you've done. And here are 5 questions that you can ask to remember the stuff you've done. So literally, like, ask yourself, what did I actually do? And this is actually, I'm looking ahead at the second resource, but you can look at this, what I call this epic list of activities list verbs, and go, okay, well, I know I did some like people stuff, like I communicate with people, but I might ask you, like, imagine that I'm just sitting across from you and quizzing you. Okay, you talk to people, but did you, like, I don't know, did you promote anything? Did you publicize anything? Document it, compose, advertise? You can get more specific and show a greater range of values here. So like, you're like, yeah, I did leadership stuff. And I'm like, well, what did that look like? Did you coordinate anything? Did you generate, improve anything? If so, give some numbers. Did you increase, for example, enrollment, et cetera? So this is really the second resource, but it's going to help you essentially make a list of things that you did. Step 1, spend at least like a minute or 2 per activity, just making a list of verbs here. Next, what are the problems that you solved or tried to solve? And it could be issues that are personal, familial, community, global. You know, think of that in all the ways. And don't skip over this. Don't just be like, well, it was just volleyball, so I didn't really solve any problems. But I'm like, because I'd be like, really? Like, I feel like volleyball team dynamics are such a thing. What did you mediate? What kind of conversations did you have off the court? So think expansively here and don't skip over this one. Lessons you learned, skills you gained. Back to my trusty values exercise for this one. Okay. So your values exercise, I'm wondering if we still have this one in here. The values exercise, I'm actually going to relink values exercise. I'm going to take you to this one instead. Okay. So in your values exercise, let's do this. Isn't it so fun to watch me live edit this? This is what you're here for, right? Okay. So values exercise is essentially looking at this and going, what did you learn? Even if it was volleyball, did you learn the value of, like, I don't know, helping others, or I don't know, you can mess around with this. You can see that this values exercise is pretty important to me, but it's a great way to generate a list of ideas of things that you learned. Impact you had. Who did you impact? Did you teach anybody anything? Did you, was it like totally all dudes in this engineering club and you enrolled folks who weren't just dude identifying? You can get specific with the numbers there. And then finally, how did you apply what you learned? Chances are you're not going to have a lot of room to put, because it's just 150 characters for these. You're probably not going to get into the how you applied what you learned. But if you spend just like 3 minutes, 4 minutes per activity answering these questions for each of your activities, and oh, by the way, here are a bunch of questions so that you can have like a little shoulder, Ethan, as you're doing this, you're going to be off to a really great start. You're going to have tons of content. Underneath this, you'll see some examples of other students who did this, one with Chinese Dance Club and another student with rowing. And the reason I had them do this like in a really extensive way is that generating a bunch of content is actually going to help you for some of these extracurricular activity essays. It's just, sometimes schools will ask for like, what else have you been involved with? And this like a longer version of this will help you with that. Okay, that's the first and the second exercise. So BB's best extracurricular activity brainstorm I've ever seen, and epic verbs list. The third one, and maybe some of you have already like finished doing this, is what I call a values scan. So look through your activities list description, and it's going to be only, like I said, 150 characters usually. This is 154, so it needs to be trimmed. But essentially, you'll put like what your thing was. So you were like the president of this thing, and you'll list like the role, and then you'll list the thing. And then these different verbs essentially connect to values. So like planned meetings, what does that tell me about you? Well, it tells me that you were organized. Recruited members, what does that tell me about you? Well, it says that you took initiative. So one way that you can kind of look at your activities list once you're done with it to know what information is coming through is to basically name the values that are coming through. And if you find that the same values are repeating themselves, that might be a sign to you that you want to maybe bring a little more variety in terms of the descriptions. Okay. I know I'm going fast, but that's another one that's super useful. When it comes to, quick side note, and for those of you who don't mind multitasking, I want to give away a book, a copy of a book that I wrote called College Admission Essentials. And we're going to put a little form, but I'm just going to like, Renee, if you wouldn't mind just like putting the link into the form that we'll share out here. And we'll just randomly choose somebody who actually we'll choose 2 people who filled out the form to get that. We'll do that in like 10 minutes. Okay. For those of you who are like, I don't want to do 2 things at once. Good. You stay with me. All right. So there's a section that's popped up in the last few years on COVID-19. And if there's a whole guide on this, and you could literally just Google COVID college essay guide, which is weird that I'm spamming the internet with that. But if you put in COVID college essay guide, you'll see a whole guide. And the short version of that guide is this. If you're applying via the Common App, or there's another one called the Coalition app, there's a specific section, it's like 250 or 300 words, and you can totally make this informational and bullet pointed. And sometimes students ask, is this more for students who face challenges or just anybody? What I'll say is like, I would kind of, as if I was your counselor, I'd be like, hey, I would trend towards like, if you face challenges and how you made the best of things, but there is a path for those of you who just want to write about cool stuff that you did and how you made the most of the pandemic. So if you're going to do the sort of challenges approach, I would recommend this format, which is just, what are the challenges and effects that you experience? And by the way, if it's like I had to do online schooling, like probably like most people had to do online schooling. So I'm talking about maybe more uncommon challenges and effects, serious impacts. I'm not saying that it wasn't serious that we all had to be online, et cetera, but ones that might be a little bit more unusual. Prefer those, I would say. And then it's important to not just be like, hey, it was terrible in all these ways and my mental health suffered, but what did you do about it? And what did you learn through the experience? And I would say of the 250 words, like dedicate about 1/3 to each of those. So like 80-ish words, 75 words on challenges and effects, 75-ish words on what you did about it, and make sure that what you learned is really coming through, AKA values you developed. If you're not describing challenges, you can use that values list to focus on 1 to 3 values that you really focused on and spend a lot of time thinking about and working on, okay? So again, you're gonna wanna write the bullet points and then write sentences. You can totally use bullet points. And I show in the guide how you can just straightforward is totally fine. I wouldn't recommend talking a lot about COVID in your personal statement because you've got this section. You can basically put all that stuff there, and then you can write about your skills and superpowers or your career or whatever else you want to focus on in the personal statement. Ba-dum-bum-bum, ba-dum-bum-bum. I'm not going to show these links just right here, but just as a heads up so that you know about it. There's a course, actually, this started last week. Course started last week. I didn't update this from last week. We have, just FYI, and then we're going to segue into Q&A in a couple minutes. We've got a couple courses. We've got one that's happening right now with the amazing Tom Campbell on applying to highly selective colleges and universities. We'll share out links to these shortly. And then I'm leading a course kind of like this. It's basically hanging out with me for a month in September, where you come in, I do sessions. I think it's Wednesday, it's Tuesdays and Wednesdays. It's basically twice, it's weeknights, and it's right around this time. And one is on the personal statement and one is on supplemental essays. And essentially it's your chance to write your entire personal statement and all of the different elements of your application in about a month. I mean, my hope is that over the course of September, if you follow along and do the homework, you'll basically be done. I do lots of online reviews where I'm like reviewing students' essays and, you know, kind of going over activities lists and giving feedback specifically. And then separate from that, if you're interested in like one-on-one help, we do that too. And that's for students who, you know, who are able to pay, but also students, if, you know, like I mentioned, match letter students. If you're not able to, we have an amazing volunteer community to connect you with support that way too, because we really believe in access. And so, yeah. So that's the sort of like, you know, high level of what's coming up at CEG. And again, if you're interested in like learning more, if you just go to collegeessayguy.com, scroll to the bottom and just put in your name here, we'll ask you like, hey, are you a student or a robot? No, a student or a counselor parent, and you can opt in and learn a lot more about all the things that we're up to. Okay, that's the main content, and hopefully questions are coming in, because we're gonna do, let's actually, if we can do the form once more, and that'll help me when I'm gonna give away the book in a minute, and like throw questions into the chat. Let's get it. Let's do some Q&A. What are you wondering about? Let me grab, we have like a not top secret Google Doc behind the scenes that has all the things that we're talking about right now. So let me pull that up real quick. All right. What questions do you have? All right. So do all colleges require essays? No, some schools don't. Many of the selective schools do. And I would say many of the highly selective schools, like the ones that are, you know, 10% less, you know, or less acceptance, those schools will have multiple supplemental essays. Common topics. Someone asked, what are some more common topics? So some things that I would say, like maybe steer clear from, and there's a YouTube video on this, but the topics that I find are most common are, actually, let me just flash up a list of these. Here are some extremely common topics. All right, let's see. This is not something that I'll share here. Like, I'm not going to share the link to this. This is the tool from the course, but let me just flash this up real quick. All right. All right. Here's just so that you have a sense of what some of these are. All right. So here are some common topics. And I'm not saying these are like, definitely don't write about these things, but I'll say like many students each year write about things like basketball and coding and marching band and swimming and track and field and video games and anime, interestingly enough. And anxiety is a very common topic now, and mental health. The ones that I think are the most common are the big performance essay, where students are like nervous to do a thing and they go do the thing and then they're like, okay, I did the thing and I built my confidence. Or the big game essay, where you're down by 3 runs or whatever, 3 points in the end, and you win the game or you lose the game but win in life. Or the sports injury essay, or the mission trip essay. So the mission trip essay is like, you go and you realize you're privileged. Like, I would steer clear of these topics because I think they're just so common and so hard to do well. And if you're like, but Ethan, then what do I write about? Because you just totally destroyed my topic. You'll see all these different paths right here for all the different things that I talked about. And this is like, each one of these inside the tool has like a different, you know, has different ideas for the examples of this, and then has sample essays with analysis, and then like a step-by-step guide on like how to write each of these different types of essays. So that's what we're up to on the course. All right, let me unshare my screen and see more questions. Can you talk about certain extracurricular activities that have made you want to attend the school more? Yes, if you connect it specifically, if you're like, I want to, you know, play intramural, I don't know, ultimate Frisbee, and this, I know that Northwestern or whatever schools, intramural ultimate Frisbee teams are like really intense in a great way. Like that would be a specific way that you can do that. So I'm not saying don't talk about sports. I'm saying if you can connect it to something really specific, or if you want to talk about a sport as far as it relates to like a superpower that you've developed, then I could see it going in the personal statement. Should we use the Common App specific essay prompts or just the final prompt that's essentially write anything you want? My advice, Mason, is to go ahead and use some of these other brainstorming exercises because I think they're more generative. They're going to help you come up with ideas they're going to be more productive, and then pick whichever prompt you end up landing on. Prompt 1 is kind of open-ended. Share about your background, a story. And then prompt 7 is, topic of your choice. And colleges don't care if you pick topic of your choice. Any advice regarding interviews? Yes, Lauren, I have a super epic guide. If you Google interview college essay guide, you'll see like an ultimate guide. It's kind of like a small book on the interview. And there's a YouTube video that's got me doing silly accents. So there's like at the start, there's like a short version of it. But what I would say is like big picture, interviews aren't essential. In other words, they're not going to probably be make or break, but if the school offers you and you've got a little time to prep, go for it. And that guide shares like ways to prep for it. Let's see. If you're not sure what you want to write about for your personal statement, is it a good idea to start with activities lists or supplementals? Yeah, that's not a bad idea, actually. So if you want to just like get productive, start working on your activities list. You can use some of the resources that I'm sharing and just get really, just jam on that. And I think that's a good idea because in terms of your activities list, having a sense of what's going to be in your brag sheet is going to actually set you at ease about what your personal statement topic is going to be. So in other words, if you end up doing a really great job on your activities list, then you're probably going to feel like less like you have to prove yourself. I think students oftentimes feel like their personal statement, they have to like talk about all the amazing things that they've done. But once they do the activities list, they're like, oh, wait, that's like already in my application. So it can totally be a way to stay productive. The other thing is like sometimes you're not sure what you want to write about for your personal statement yet, but you can do research on why you want to go to the school. And that's like kind of separate work. So if you want to, for example, write a why us essay, if the school requires it, that can be great too. How can I join your class you just mentioned? So we're going to share out links to this. Elena, I don't know if we're doing it. Are we doing this links on this session or are they all going to be follow-up? Maybe you can remind me. Go.
We'll include them in the follow-up, the links to all the courses and to one-on-one coaching too.
Sweet. Awesome. So we will follow up with all of those. Is there a course for UC applications? There is, Winnie. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I did a totally separate guide on the UCs. That's happening in October, in the early October. So that's actually a 2-week mini course because I can communicate most of what I want to communicate to y'all in a couple sessions. And that's got a whole separate guide. The UCs are very particular about what they're looking for. And so I cover all of that with tons of examples. When should I start forming my application? If you're going into like your 12th grade year, so your senior year, now is the perfect time. So I would say get as much done as you can before school starts and right at the start of school, just so that you'll have time in case you're applying early. So now is a great time. If you're a student who's like, still got a year or two left, you can wait until you're getting ready to go into 12th grade. How do I go about weak extracurriculars? I would say, focus on what you can control at this point. So can y'all, wow, there's like lots of screaming in the background. Excuse me, one second. Good time to fill out the form. Well, it's bath time with my friend's kid, and he was not having it. All right. So essentially, in terms of weak extracurriculars, like what can you, what can you control at this point? So if you're a student who's like, I don't have a ton of things that I've done. First of all, I'll say like, no use beating yourself up. Focus on the time that you have. So if you've got some time to get involved, maybe you have 0 volunteer experiences. You've still got time. You've got a few months before these are due. So I think it's not a bad idea to potentially get involved with something. I think I would make sure that you definitely have expanded your college list. So in other words, if you're applying only to highly selective schools and you're like, can I get into X really selective school that has a 3% acceptance rate with weak extracurriculars? I would say make sure that you're applying to a lot of different schools that you can, that you're pretty sure that you can get into. But again, focus on what you can control. Do the best description of the activities that you have done, and be honest in your application. If there are reasons that you haven't been able to be involved in extracurriculars, that's something that you could talk about in the additional information section, if that feels important. What's a good timeline for the personal statement essay? Like September? I mean, essentially, if you're applying early, these will be due like, early to mid-November. If you're applying regular decision, it's January. But I think it's a good idea to spend the next month or so working on your personal statement so that you've got it done a few weeks ahead of time. So September. How do you structure a good UC essay? Oh, Mia, that's a whole separate course. Do I have time? I don't really have time to get into the specifics of it, but what I'll say, the way it's different from a personal statement is you want to focus much more on the informational. And I'll say that BB's exercise is going to be really, really useful for generating lots of content, because UCs are more interested in what is the information, the content that's going to set you apart from other students in your school who are applying, and less on the sort of like poetic, like, hey, look at what a great writer I am. Can I fill all 10 for the activities list? You can. You don't have to, but you can. The average student, I think, fills in 5 or 6. So let's see. I'm going to kind of jump around here. Is it okay to write about challenges? Yes. How do I stand out when I do that? Great question, Emma. So there's an exercise called the feelings and needs exercise. If you Google feelings and needs college essay guy, and essentially it's like a 20-minute exercise that I walk through on YouTube, and it's going to direct you to thinking about the 3 different pieces that I mentioned earlier. So it's the challenges and effects, what I did about it, and what I learned. When you're thinking about those, again, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, ask yourself, if you're trying to decide, should I write about this or write about one of these other things? I would say make sure that you're brainstorming other topics, because sometimes students are like thinking about, should I write about this challenge or not? And they don't have other options about other things that they could write about. So I want to encourage you to try that, the video that I mentioned at the start, where you've got those 7 different personal statement ideas. The main question you're going to want to come back to is, what's the best way to show my skills, qualities, values, and interests? Is it this challenge that I faced? If so, great. If not, it could be that there's something else that you write about, and you're able to like maybe mention the challenge briefly in the middle of the essay. Or in some cases, students will have challenges that they put in the additional information section. And that's the section that I mentioned. So there's the COVID additional info, that's 250 words. And then we've got the larger additional information section, which we didn't have time to talk about today, but it's essentially like 650 words where you can kind of talk about whatever you want. So in some cases, I've seen students talk about, for example, learning differences there, and say like, here's a challenge that I experienced and how it impacted me. Here's what I did about it, and here's what I learned. And they basically put the challenge in their additional info, and they use their personal statement to talk about some other side of who they are. Okay, we're gonna take, I'm gonna give away a book here, and then I'll hang out for a few more minutes and do some more questions, because I like answering college application questions, or so it would seem. Okay, so, oh, cool, a bunch of y'all filled it out. Okay, let me give 1 more minute for y'all to fill this out, and we'll throw it into the form one more time, or we'll throw it into the chat, and then we'll give away 2 different books. Okay, so we'll hang out for another like 5 minutes. All right, how do you approach the essay if it's for a safety school? Don't have safe, no, the term safety school is like, I don't really want to go there. No, I think what you're saying is like a school that, first of all, I want you to try and fall in love with the quote unquote safety school, because I want you to have schools that you would legit like and go to, and you can find those. But I would say, Isaac, spend time and energy on the schools that you're most excited about. And in many cases, you're going to be able to reuse that content for those schools, and that'll save you a bunch of time. That's the short answer. Someone asked, I answered this one already. How do you approach the YS when you're not sure what you want to major in? Again, mention a few things that you're into, 2 or 3 things. The start, do a paragraph on each, and then boom. If it's a short one, do maybe a sentence on each. Is it a bad idea to personally email the professor of the college for advice or questions about a major? I think it's not a great idea to ask them about advice, or because they're really busy. If you want to get in touch with the professor because you're interested in, like, you have a specific question and you want to, like, I don't know, get involved in their research potentially. Let's say you're watching this and you're doing it in like grade 9 or grade 10, then I think that could be cool. I would direct questions about a particular major to the admissions office. And then I would say, and you could ask, is there someone that I could talk to on campus? And then if they direct you to a professor, then I think it's okay. Let's see, I've answered some of these already. Let's see. Is it risky to not send a score? I don't think it's risky, Natalie. I think that colleges, when they say they're test optional, some schools are test optional, meaning like, they're like, you can send a score or not. Some schools are test blind, like the UCs, where they won't even look at scores. They're like, we don't count them. It's not risky. I mean, it's like, it's a data point that they don't have, especially for like international students. If they don't have that, then they're maybe looking with a little bit more rigor at other parts of your application. So what does a test score show? It could show, that's going to go down like a particular path, and it's kind of debatable what test scores actually show. So let me not get into that. There's a future podcast coming out on that in a couple months. But I would say, if you feel like your test scores are in the top 25 percentile of the average scores that are accepted, like of students that are accepted, and you can look these up, then maybe go for it. But it's pretty particular to the school and the student. So I would really direct you back to your counselor, but that's kind of like general advice. If it's like probably going to look good to them, great. But if not, it's okay. They're just going to, they'll look at the rest of your application. How do I get Mr. Sawyer to look at my personal statement? Come join the course. That would be a great way to do it. Let's see. Can I talk about a medical diagnosis in the additional info section? Yes, Brooke, that's exactly what that's for. Totally. Should I talk about my culture? Totally. Again, as long as you connect, like if you want to talk about culture, the trick is to connect it to like specific values, skills, qualities that you're going to bring to a college campus. And stay tuned, because there's a whole blog post coming out on that, and a podcast coming up in like a couple weeks. Let's see. Is it okay if we have very few awards? Okay, I want to bring y'all back to this. What can I control? If you don't have awards, there's nothing you can do about it, right? So like when I hear, is it okay? It's like, can you still get into college? Yes. Is there anything you can do about it? Probably not. So again, like focus on what you can control. And what you can control right now is like the work that you're doing over the next month or two to work hard on your applications, and expanding your college list to make sure that you're applying to like a wide range of schools. Yeah. Okay, let's give away some books. And thanks for y'all for filling out the form. All right, it's 8:04 my time, so that's 12. So I'm going to give it to the 12th person who filled it out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, Lauren, Issa, if you're here, you win. Let us know in the chat if you're here. You win a book. And I'm going to give it to the 12th most recent person to fill out the form. So let's scroll down. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And Tessa Driscoll. If you're here, you're the next contestant on the prices right now. You win. Are y'all here? If you're here, let me know in the chat. And if not, we'll pick somebody else. Okay. Lauren is not here. Thanks, Renee. Tessa's here. All right. We're going to pick somebody else. All right, let's do a pop quiz. Let's do a pop quiz, and whoever can answer it first will win the book. Let's see. The pop quiz is, let me go back in my presentation and see if anybody was following closely. Okay. Describe succinctly one of the recommended approaches that I would take to writing a great Why-Us essay. What is the key to writing a great Why-Us essay, in Ethan's humble opinion? There's some good quick answers. I'm going to look for the one that I feel like is most thorough and succinct. And I'll look at speed as well. You know what? I'm going to go with, because this person said it, I think, quickest. Research about college and relate it to yourself. Nayla, you win, assuming you filled out the form. That's a really good, and I want to just like make that point here as we wrap, is like, yeah, finding those specifics. Nayla, did you fill out the form? Yeah, you did. Awesome. You win. Great. Awesome. You were actually the next person to fill out the form after the person who wasn't here. Yeah, coming back to that, like finding the specifics related to the school, finding the specifics that you connect with, and just connecting back and forth between those two things. Yay, you did. Awesome. You win. Thanks, friends. Thanks for hanging out. And I'd love to hang out with you more. If you want to hang out, feel free to take one of the courses, or we're on the Instagrams and the YouTubes and what are they calling it now? X. So feel free to join on any of those platforms. And thanks to Elena. Elena, is there anything else you want to say before we wrap?
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. Ethan, these are such amazing tips. I always say I wish that I had these resources when I was applying to college. So hopefully you all take advantage of them. And of course, check out College Essay Guys blog, Scoir for College Essay Guys content as well. And good luck. Happy essay writing.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Thanks, y'all. Have a beautiful.
I was wondering, I had a question. Is it all right if I just unmute and ask, or should I just ask in the chat?
Let's end recording and then up for one more minute.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.